So my name is Lucía G. Romero. I'm a graduate film student from Spain. I'm half Cuban and half Spanish. And I'm here at the Berlinale 14 plus generation to present my short film, CURA SANA. CURA SANA is a story about two girls, two sisters, who are affected by violence at home and how that violence affects them throughout one of their routine trips to the food stamp office on the night of San Juan, a very popular holiday here in Spain. And well, with the film, I wanted to explore topics of violence, of social issues, and what it's like to live in the margins of society, and love between two sisters.
Hola, Jessie. Hola.
¿Te has olvidado de mí?
El Papa hoy está en casa. Coges la comida y vas directico para allá, que quiero pasar un San Juan relajadita.
Va, a vestirte. ¡Alma! ¡Alma!
¿Quién te la ha hecho?
Cuida hoy de tu hermana, por favor.
Cuidada tú.
Cura sana, culita de rana. Si no se cura hoy, se curará mañana.
Hello and welcome to the 38th Teddy Award. My name is Jan-Felix Wuttig and today I'm here with Lucía G. Romero to talk about a film, CURA SANA. Hello, Lucía.
Hello, thank
Very
you for
pleased to
having
meet
me.
you. Yeah.
It's,
And welcome to the Berlinale, welcome to the Teddy
Yes.
Award.
Yes.
And thank you so much for CURA SANA. I enjoyed it very much. It's a very beautiful and smart film about two sisters. It's set during the San Juan celebrations, and they kind of live through the day and deal with poverty and family and violence. It's dedicated to Lupe and Lucia in Azul, and it's dedicated also to all the mothers, all the daughters and sisters, and it feels very personal. Maybe we can start with you telling me a little bit about what your idea was for the film, how the idea came about.
Great. So, as you said, the film is very personal. It's a family history. And, well, it's something that happened to my ancestors, my mother, my grandma. And since I started really studying film and exploring stories, this story was on my mind. And I've been really interested in violence. Maybe not in itself, but violence, but rather the consequences of violence and how violence impacts our behavior and how we treat each other and how we treat ourselves, really. So I was just really exploring how the sister dynamic, as you see in the film, how it gets tainted by the abuse in the household. And yeah, it really was an exploration of, even though the violence, I didn't want to show the violence in the short film, I wanted the spectator to see how the violence affected really everything in these kids and these teenagers' lives.
Yes. One thing that really impressed me was that the film starts with a fight scene, right?
Yes.
So we get to know Jessica sort of by way of that fight scene as she is sort of raining down violence onto another girl. What was your idea behind starting off the film in that way?
Well, I wanted you to see how Jessica basically is like following kind of her father's footsteps on that topic, I wanted you to see that she was a very defensive and aggressive young girl. And then later on the film, you discover why.
Yeah.
So at first, maybe you just misjudge her or you make assumptions about her. And then you can really see where this violence comes from and how she kind of manages to overcome that throughout the film.
Yeah. Yeah, I understand it quite clearly that you can basically take your spectator by the hand and kind of take him from that one place where he assumes that Jessica is just violent, that you can take him to another place of where the violence actually comes from. The social setting of the film, which is kind of rooted in poverty, it's about welfare checks and Caritas supplies. It feels very real, something that I really liked about the film, that it's very vivid, it feels very, very intense. Is that something that you observed, or is it something you drew from experience?
Yes, I drew it from experience. I come from a lower middle class background, and I've always had that experience to going to the food stamps and to like making ends meet. And I've always seen my family basically struggle. And as you said, it's focused on neighborhoods in Barcelona or near Barcelona, where there's a lot of immigration and there's also a lot of like, poverty, as you said.
Yeah.
So I also wanted to reflect what I've lived and what many others have to live.
Yeah.
And I think that it is a point where I wanted to make the point that also like institutional violence contributes to how violence plays in each of the girls' lives.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Yeah.
I think that translates really well into the film. I think that really comes together very beautifully. And one of the ways that it does is through your two main actresses. And I absolutely have to ask, how did you find them? Because when you make a movie like this, you have to have a certain force, you know? Right. And that is established through the chemistry between those two, and they have incredible chemistry.
Right.
So how did you find them?
So actually, I work with a casting director, Ana Barja, and we focused on non-actors for the part. And really, it just came down to, I think we saw like 30 girls in total. We didn't see a lot of young girls, and both of them are from areas where I grew up. I spent my adolescence, and they didn't know each other, so they are not related, which is a question I always get asked, because they look alike and they also like seem really close on screen. Yeah. And so they had never acted, have never done an improv, which we did on the first day of castings. And the moment I saw them, I was like, I saw Roser, the oldest one, first. Yeah. And I was like, she's Jessica. Like, it was just like, we had a moment, and she was then at the time 13 years old. She was very little. Oh. And yeah, she just had that inner strength, I think. And although she didn't have the technique, I thought that was something we could learn together along the way. But she had like the spirit. Yeah. And so we had that. We were very lucky to find them in the earlier stages of the film. So we spent 6 months training and doing the rehearsals. Wow. Okay. And it was, especially what was more important was the bond between them and with me, and like the trust we built. And we worked on getting them comfortable around the camera, getting them like to be as natural as they were on camera than behind the camera. Yeah. And that was a huge part, like the 6 months we had together before filming.
Yeah, and that really shows. I mean, especially in scenes like when Alma loses the trolley, and then Jessica confronts her about it, and she's just shouting in her face. That needs a special form of trust between actresses in that sense. About that scene, actually, we have a scene later on in the film where Alma loses all the welfare goods, and it seems like the trolley in which the welfare goods are is thrown in the sea by tourists.
Yes.
And it's a very powerful image because you have those sort of parallel societies. You know, you have people who have immigrated or who are just generally living in the poorer areas, who are dependent on welfare, and then you have sort of like party tourists, just sort of ignorant and stupid, and just completely out of what their actions will do. What was the idea behind that scene?
So yes, because in San Juan is a very popular holiday in Spain, and there's a lot of tourists that come and celebrate. Mm-hmm. I was like, yes, as you said, I wanted to showcase how people can come to Spain for very different reasons and in very different positions. And that also, I think, has to do with color.
Yeah.
Right? And of course, the country you come and the economic status you come to the country with.
Yeah, yeah.
Yes.
One thing that the film is dependent upon, or maybe a thing that the film revolves around, is the presence of the father, who we don't see. And that I found specifically interesting. You said earlier that you didn't want to show violence as much as you wanted to talk about the consequences of violence towards the family. What was the idea behind putting the father off screen?
Right. So yes, I think I had a very clear idea that I didn't want him shown. One, because it's not interesting to me to see the protagonist in that type of situation, I think. Mm-hmm. I think I wanted to dignify them in a way where, of course, I'm touching on these very heavy subjects, but I'm giving them the grace to not put the camera where the real violence happens. Yeah. So they're not tainted by this, I don't know how to say, but by this degrading and awful situation, which I think it just wasn't necessary for the film. Mm-hmm. And as you said, I wanted to speak on the consequences of it. So the violence itself, I think it's not interesting to me, really.
Yeah, yeah.
Right? Because I think it's like a very primary behavior, but I'm more interested in what are the causes behind that.
Yeah. And I felt there were many very powerful images in the film where you have the feeling that, okay, there is violence at home, and it matters, but what really matters is sort of how we deal with it and how Jessica and Alma act towards each other. So that basically what happens in the house, behind closed curtains, maybe doesn't hurt as much, or maybe does not have the same kind of implications. There's also a scene where we maybe see Jessica's tender side for the first time when she meets Nati at the party. And there seems to be, like, for me at least, I felt that there was a specific tenderness between those two girls. What was the idea behind including this aspect of queer love in the film?
Well, the queer part was basically drawn from experience. Like, to me, it didn't make sense that she would to portray a straight relationship, because it's not my reality. And as I said before, this film is very drawn to me, very close to me. So yeah, when it come down to it, I wanted to explore that part of Jessica, that she's still a child.
Yeah,
She's like, this movie is about violence, but I feel like it's also a coming of age.
Yeah.
Where she's like, I want to do these things, I want to party, I want to see my crush, but at the same time, I'm having to deal with these real adult things that I shouldn't be dealing with. So it just, I was like, I want to also give her the space in the film to just, yeah, maybe show that she can be loved, right? And that to me, writing the script, was also one of the tools that later on the last scene when they forgive each other, the Alma and Jessica, that love that she receives from Nati is like kind of a tool to show love to her little sister later on the film.
Beautiful. I also felt that this scene made it known to us that violence has happened to Jessica, but it doesn't necessarily need to be part of her. Like it doesn't, she doesn't need to be violent. She can also be tender. Sort of, tender and a normal teenager with her love and her affection. And she doesn't need to be defined by that certain abuse. All right, Lucía, thank you very much. I think that's it for today. I want to thank you again for taking the time. And thank you again for CURA SANA. It was a pleasure, and all the best for the premiere.
Thank you. We're so excited.